Your Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammad Buhari, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, the Chairman of the Association of African Central Banks, Honorable Ministers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Chairman of the Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance, and Other Financial Institutions, Chairman of the House Committee on Banking and Currency, fellow governors of African central banks, distinguished executive governors here present, because I see my brother, the governor of Kebbi State, Atiku Bagudu, fellow governors of African central banks, distinguished speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege for me to personally and warmly welcome you to Nigeria and to today's occasion of the 2016 Governors Symposium of the Association of African Central Banks. For the Central Bank of Nigeria, this is indeed a historic moment in view of this being the second time we are hosting this symposium, having hosted the first in this beautiful city of Abuja on the 22nd of February, 1999. It is also historic for us because we are indeed delighted and particularly honored to have in our midst today His Excellency, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammad Buhari. I believe that this is his first time coming into the central bank after becoming the president more than a year ago. Your Excellency, your presence in today's event, in spite of your very, very busy schedule, no doubt brings immense inspiration and determination to our association to redouble our efforts towards the achievement of a sustainable economic growth and monetary integration in our continent. We thank you very much, sir, for honoring the AACB with your presence today. To the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, fellow governors and distinguished speakers, we welcome very specially to the Central Bank of Nigeria in particular and to our city, Abuja in general. Fellow governors, the highly remarkable record of attendance being witnessed today at the African Central Bank Governors Symposium from outside Africa and various parts of our continent is a testimony of our collective resolve and commitment to utilize the platform provided by our association to deliberate and proffer solutions to the numerous economic challenges facing our continent. That is why this year's theme, titled Unwinding Unconventional Monetary Policies, Implications for Monetary Policy and Financial Stability in Africa, squarely captures one of the major challenges we are grappling with at the moment in the world and our continent in particular. Given the prevalence of cross-border banks across African landscape, it is critical to reiterate the need for our continent, consistent international support, and effective participation in all the activities of the AACB. This support and participation is essential in order to provide the AACB with the necessary vibrancy to continue to serve as veritable platform for galvanizing our efforts towards solving problems which afflict us as a group. One of such problems that I believe we may discuss at these meetings is the massive illicit financial flows being perpetrated by persistent shadow financial system. Over the years, this has been a major hindrance to our efforts towards economic development in our continent. I strongly believe that we can effectively tackle such malaise through continuous cooperation, collaboration, and advocacy of greater transparency in the global financial system. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, for the excellent choice of theme and topics for discussion during the various plenary sessions. The topics as highlighted in the agenda of the symposium would undoubtedly set a stage for a lively and thought-provoking discussion. In particular, I believe we will be analyzing our potential responses to spillovers from the unwinding of the unconventional monetary policies introduced around the world about 8 years ago. Fellow governors, ladies and gentlemen, the choice of theme of today's symposium could not have come at a more auspicious time than now, considering the prominent space it has occupied in the discourse among central banks in the aftermath of the 2008 global financial crisis. With the paucity of literature on the topic and the overwhelming consensus among experts that unwinding unconventional monetary policy could present challenges to financial stability, it has become necessary for central banks to evolve an appropriate countervailing strategy as a safeguard against any negative spillovers on financial stability. This is even more critical for central banks in developing countries, given our openness to international trade and financial flows, as well as somewhat inherently weak shock-absorbing capacities. Ladies and gentlemen, these are really vexing issues indeed and require thoroughbred experts to dissect, discuss, and proffer solutions. On this, therefore, I'm particularly delighted that we have been able to assemble a strong array of distinguished speakers to handle various topics today. These persons are experts in their various fields of specialization with strong capacity to open new frontiers of knowledge which could be utilized to address impediments to economic development in our vast continent. It is my sincere hope that the outcome of this symposium will set the stage for the emergence of virile and strong national economies all across this continent that we love. I'd like to conclude my address by once again expressing our sincere appreciation to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, honorable ministers, distinguished lawmakers, eminent speakers, and invited guests for honoring our invitation today. I wish you all a very enjoyable and productive symposium, and long live the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
Mr. Godwin Emefiele, Governor, Central Bank of Nigeria, and Vice Chairman of the Association of African Central Bank.
As I look into your eyes, I can't help but wax lyrical by this amazing continent. I love Africa, not because I'm born here, but I love Africa because my spirit resonates with the aspiration of my continent. I love Africa, not because my skin is black, but because Africa is a destination of prosperity as we go forward. And that is why I'm very happy here that the representative of the chairman of the African Union Commission is here with us, and he'll be talking to us about this Africa that we all love and adore and wish it to prosper as we go forward. Let me welcome here Dr. Anthony Marupik.
creation of the Association of African Central Banks follows the decision by heads of states and government of the Organization of African Union.
Those on the podium, I may falter on protocol here, but I would say Honorable Minister and Representative of the Senate and members of the House of Representatives here present. And then I go to the governors of central banks, especially the President of the Association of African Central Banks, our dear host and his vice, Dr. Edwin Emefiele, and members of the Monetary Policy Committee who are here, the Central Bank of Nigeria, our respected and highly admired speakers at today's symposium, and our valued senior officials and our distinguished guests. I'm here on behalf of Her Excellency Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, and my fellow commissioners. They greet you. My team and I are very delighted to be in Nigeria, the birthplace of the Lagos Plan of Action, and in this vibrant and thriving city of Abuja, the seat of the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and the cradle of the Abuja Treaty. Both of them form part of the solid foundation of Africa's own Agenda 2063, the continent's blueprint for socio-economic transformation, the imperative of our times. We have to transform our economies. Let me take this opportunity to express profound gratitude to our host, the Central Bank of Nigeria, the authorities and the people of Nigeria, and of Abuja in particular, for a warm welcome and for courtesies extended to us since our arrival. It has been outstanding. Nigerians have done it again and again with their remarkable and unrivaled hospitality. It would be remiss of me not to express a very special word of thanks to His Excellency President of the Republic, President Muhammadu Buhari, for personally taking time of his very busy schedule to officiate at the opening of the Association of African Central Banks Symposium. It's true of astute, determined, and effective generals always to take rounds to review their troops on the front line, in the trenches, to motivate them and let them know that their efforts count. Central bank governors are the vanguard in the stabilization of financial markets and macro economies and in stimulating growth. Governors are often obliged to take tough decisions, to perform courageous tasks, and to implement credible policies that may feel unpalatable in the short term, but all for the good of the people and the country. And I may as well add to the continent. They do need encouragement. They are currently battling with the impact of global slowdown and unfavorable climatic phenomenon, as well as the unwinding of monetary policies in major economies abroad. The impact has been and continues to be so strong that it calls for drastic measures, conventional as well as unconventional. The situation calls for concerted efforts on the part of those in charge of monetary and financial matters, as well as those in fiscal and income policies front. For effectiveness, these policies should be a harmonious and coherent and indeed well-aligned package and timing and the size of dosage matter. Hence, taking Your Excellency most profoundly as the overall, thanking him as the overall overseer to have taken time to come and encourage these knights we have here in shining armor, our dependable, determined and courageous governors of central banks. We thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you very much. This brings us to the topic of the day, which is very timely, very topical: unwinding unconventional monetary policies, implications for monetary policy and financial stability in Africa, which derives from the background just outlined, namely responding to the blow of drastic global slowdown and unfavorable climatic phenomena, as well as that unwinding of policies in major economies abroad. The situation calls for conventional as well as unconventional measures, even in the monetary policy domain. So unwinding of unconventional policies abroad brought about a rise in sovereign debt and inflationary pressures here in Africa as domestic currencies depreciated and affected the inflows. Inflows dwindled. So what to do? So cross-border, erratic cross-border flows do matter. They do destabilize. On the African front, as we may recall, since the beginning of the 2000s, African gross domestic product growth was more than doubled, just from 2% or slightly above 2% in the 1980s and 1990s to above 5% between 2001 and 2014. This economic performance was favored by an increased domestic and international demand, high commodity prices, public investment on infrastructure, tighter trade and investment linkages, given emerging economies such as that of China, and improving global economy and relatively favorable continental business environment. Today, however, the situation has dramatically changed. This meeting is being held at a time when most of African economies are confronted by challenges related to the sharp decline of commodity prices, particularly oil and metals, with an impact manifested in decline in revenues, among other ways, many other ways. In addition, China's growth slowed down to below 7% at its transition from investment and exports of industrial goods towards consumption and services production orientation has also heavily impacted on Africa's economic performance. Further, climate change in the form of severe and prolonged drought and floods has ravaged countries, affecting electricity generation, displacement of people, diseases, and food security, among others. This situation has led to wider fiscal deficit for commodity exporter countries, mainly because of eroded tax bases and thus reduced fiscal revenues. Since 2015, most African economies have experienced current accounts deficits. As a response to these headwinds, most countries have exercised tight monetary policies to curb inflation and high fiscal and current account deficit. Inflation increased because of weaker domestic currencies and declining commodity prices and rising food prices. As a result of reduced budget space, most central banks have responded to financial and economic crisis by expanding the set of their tools deployed to ensure financial stability and stimulate growth. These interventions included expansion of their traditional role as lenders of last resort through large-scale purchase of government bonds. This is what is quantitative is in these days. Various lending programs and guidance over at the we can do. This will be elaborated upon by the experts who are here invited. The ultimate objective really is stable and accelerated, inclusive real growth, not a balloon, not a yo-yo economy of boost and bust, but economic growth and with equity, you know, a job-creating growth that leads to poverty eradication, rapid, resilient, and inclusive, as well as sustainable socio-economic development that entails human development. I look forward to learning, like others, from the Grand Masters later on in the day. I have seen some of the highly knowledgeable professionals here as speakers on the speakers list, and among the participants as well, whom I respect and admire very much, and with whom I have rubbed shoulders for a long time, and they make me feel very humble. I thank you, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic, President Muhammadu Buhari, Your Excellencies, and your distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time.
His Excellency Anthony Maruping is the Commissioner for Economic Affairs at the African Union Commission. The creation of the Association of African Central Banks follows the decision by heads of state and government of the Organization of African Unity, OAU, on May 25, 1963 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
It was Max Dupree who once said that there are two extremes to leadership. The first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. The last is to say thank you. In between these two, the leader is a servant. And for those who have known the chairman of this association, they know he qualifies as a servant, but as an amazing servant with fantastic leadership qualities. It's therefore my honor and pleasure to welcome here Mr. Lucas Abuja Chamo to step forward here, the president of the association.
The first Association of African Central Banks meeting of governors was held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia on February 15 to 22nd, 1965, mainly to examining a cooperation mechanism. The extraordinary meeting of the association. The association has organized about 38 ordinary sessions, with the 39th holding in Nigeria for the first time.
Speak French. Son Excellence, Monsieur Muhammadu Buhari, Président de la République fédérale du Nigeria, Mesdames et Messieurs les membres du gouvernement, Monsieur le représentant de la Commission de l'Union africaine, Monsieur le gouverneur de la Banque centrale du Nigeria, Mesdames et Messieurs les gouverneurs des banques centrales, Mesdames et Messieurs les représentants des institutions internationales, distingués invités en vos rangs. C'est un insigne honneur de prendre la parole au cours de cette cérémonie d'ouverture du symposium placé sous le thème pendant des politiques monétaires non conventionnelles, implications pour la politique monétaire et la stabilité financière en Afrique. Excellent Monsieur le Président de la République, en cette occasion très spéciale, il me tient à cœur de vous exprimer mon immense gratitude d'avoir bien voulu accepter de rehausser de votre présence et de présider personnellement cette cérémonie d'ouverture. Votre précieuse disponibilité témoigne de l'attachement que vous avez toujours manifesté à la construction d'un espace monétaire et financier intégré au niveau continental et en particulier à l'objectif de création d'une banque centrale unique et d'une monnaie commune dans notre continent. Ce noble et surtout nécessaire objectif d'intégration monétaire de notre continent est une exaltante entreprise dont les progrès déjà réalisés méritent d'être consolidés et poursuivis afin d'accélérer l'émergence économique.
Emergence of economic growth in Africa. Also, the massive participation in this symposium by the highest authorities of the continent in charge of financial and monetary policy shows us the great satisfaction that we have. That satisfies us, our common will to concretize the integration in Africa. Your Excellency, President of the Republic, ladies and gentlemen, the recent progress of the economy of the developed countries, particularly the deflation and the effect of the structural adjustment, led central banks to adopt monetary policies that are non-conventional. In effect, facing the crisis and the inefficiency of previous monetary policies, Central Bank of advanced countries recourse to injection of liquidity and repurchase of bonds, and in the control of the interest rates. If the economic result of these monetary policies from one country to the other, it is admitted commonly that the tools used contribute to stabilize relatively financial markets base and also have effect on international growth. But we observe that we still have a lot to do because of the slow growth that we have in these developed countries. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, today, central banks of advanced countries now abandon the conventional policies. In this context, we have to ask what should be done by African Central Bank, whose economy today face crisis based on the shock, particularly the fall in primary price of primary goods, the issue of oil, the price of oil that fell. Therefore, what the monetary economy of Central Africa that comprises Cameroon, Central Africa, Congo, Gabon, Guinea, Equatorial Guinea, the BAC, the Bank of Central African State, has to carry out a balance of monetary policies in order to control inflation, and a solid banking system is needed to, of course, support efforts carried out by member states in order to have a growth, economic growth, using particularly the reduction of the guidelines of the rates and the various reserves, and also increasing the actives and restoring bond markets, and also use the rate of exchange in order to control the system. All these measures became necessary in order to face fast to the problem of liquidity and also ensure macroeconomic stability that we need today in the zone. And the current, to face the problem of the fall in the exported goods. The monetary policy to face the current problem could not solve all these problems. It is therefore necessary to complete these monetary policies by budgetary policies that are efficient through appropriate reforms. Your Excellency, President of the Republic, ladies and gentlemen, the goodwill of central banks of industrialized countries to get out of this monetary policy concerns us also in Africa today, because the consequences are having effect on us because of the abandon of non-conventional measures on our own economy here in Africa. In effect, some of the measures are still useful where they are necessary and could be used in some countries. Of course, there may be distortion here and there, but the possible issues that could affect the monetary policy and also the issue of debt of the state, particularly their potential impact on our economy. It is therefore necessary that today's symposium will contribute to bring ideas and reflection on this issue, and that concern the interests of our continent by touching on the concerns that are linked to the shock that our economies are suffering because of the fall in the price of our commodities. Inflation and the rate of exchange and the strategy to be adopted and adequate instrument to be used while preserving stability in our economies. In this regard, I'm happy to hear what the central banks have expressed, particularly the setting up of a non-conventional and conventional monetary policy to deepen our discussions in order to bring out useful lessons that we can all use in the situation. Your Excellency, President of the Republic, ladies and gentlemen, before concluding, I want to commend the efforts of all one for the success of this meeting. In particular, I want to thank the authorities of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that facilitate this meeting by the supply of logistic necessities for the efficient organization of this meeting. I want to thank the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria and his staff that have done everything possible to take necessary measures to ensure that this meeting is a success. To all the distinguished invitees that honor us with their presence here in Abuja, a city built by Africans. Finally, on behalf of all my colleagues, governors of central banks, members of the Association of African Central Banks, as well as myself, to wish all of you a welcome to this symposium. I also want to thank all of you by wishing the meeting success. Based on unwinding unconventional monetary policies, implications for monetary policy and financial stability in Africa. Long live Association of African Central Banks. Long live African integration. Thank you for your kind attention.
Promotion of cooperation in the monetary, banking, and financial spheres in the African region. One of the major objectives of the Association of African Central Banks. Other objectives include to examine the effectiveness of international economic and financial institutions in which African countries have an interest and suggest ways of possible improvement.
Excellency, President Buhari, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the AU Chair, the Chair of the ASCB, Ministers and Senate members here present, Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Governors and Deputy Governors here present, all protocol observed, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me first of all extend the apologies of the Managing Director who would have loved to be here, but then because of earlier commitments, she cannot make it. This morning, I'm humbled and honored to speak before this distinguished audience today. I applaud the Association of the African Central Banks, ASCB, for regularly organizing symposiums of governors of African central banks to discuss and share experiences on monetary, banking, and financial issues of current interest that affect the region. At the IMF, we see the sharing of experiences as a form of peer learning by those who keep their ears close to the ground and deal with these issues on a daily basis. We therefore value and have very high respects for the outcomes of such meetings. To the extent that these issues touch on the core mandate of the fund, we appreciate the invitation of the ASCB to also offer our thinking on some of these issues. It is therefore, against this background, that I would like to offer a few thoughts that are related to this year's symposium theme, Unwinding the Unconventional Monetary Policies, UMPs, its implication for monetary and financial stability in Africa, which is perhaps appropriate given that this year, 2016, economic performance in the continent is expected to show the region in the midst of its most challenging economic period in some 25 years. Questions therefore abound as to how this can be reversed, including by asking what is the role of monetary policy in managing the forces of globalization. My remarks are based on staff thinking, recent IMF policy papers on related issues, country experiences being a member-based organization, and of course, management speeches on related issues. Specifically, I'll focus on the unwinding of the UMPs and its possible implications for the African continent. I will not say much on the UMPs itself because a lot has been written, a lot has been said. But all I can say in terms of the UMPs that have been implemented more recently is that vulnerabilities quickly did build up during the accommodation of monetary policy, leaving countries that did not pursue prudent macroeconomic policies to strengthen the economic fundamentals exposed in the episode of unwinding of the UMPs. So, countries, including Africa, of the UMP unwinding. Certainly, we expect capital flow reversals. Currency depreciations is going to be inevitable for countries as advanced economies begin to tighten monetary policy. The risk of financial instability and excessive volatility arising from this unwinding is not trivial. Why is this the case, particularly in Africa? The sudden reversals of capital flows, combined with the shallow and the underdeveloped markets and other market imperfections, can lead to excessive market volatility, large depreciations, sharp fall in asset prices, and credit crunches. As the asset prices fall, the financial sector could suffer with an increasing non-performing loans, shrinking capital buffers, which could further amplify shocks and impact adversely on the real sector. Of course, it can be worsened if the ease policy had resulted in the buildup of foreign currency exposures, in this case, currency depreciation. So the extent of the impact would certainly depend on the extent to which a country is exposed and is resilient to these flows. The other issue that the governors may want to consider is the monetary policy trade-offs. How do you handle large outflows following the unwinding of UMPs? You have to be very careful in terms of the right policy mix to reduce the outflows, while at the same time not causing recessionary tendencies in the economy. We are all aware that the recent strengthening of the recent recovery, relative recovery of the US economy, together with the divergence monetary policies in the advanced countries, has led to the strengthening of the United States dollar. And this is putting pressures on countries whose exchange rates are linked to the dollar, but they conduct substantial share of their external trade in other currencies. The dollar appreciation is also exerting pressures on the balance sheet of banks, firms, households, and sovereigns that have borrowed in dollars but have assets or earnings in other currencies. The announcement impact of the taper tantrum by Chairman Bernanke in May-June 2013 resulted to some spreads increasing overall in a number of sub-Saharan African sovereigns that had issued bonds, but much less for those that had stronger fundamentals measured by smaller current account and budget deficits. We have also seen that in 2014 and 2013, a number of African countries were able to issue Eurobonds. In fact, in 2013, the Eurobonds. In 2014 and 2015, we saw 7 countries in each year issue Eurobonds amounting to 7.9 billion and 6.8 billion. On the contrary, in 2016, there has been a very dry year with only one country issuing a bond of 1.25 billion. So whether this is reflecting or whether this is linked to the UMP unwinding events is not easy to tell. But the bottom line is that the rollover risks are real for those countries that have issued the Eurobonds. It might be harder to roll them over, or it's going to require higher rates. And the bad news is that the taper tantrum is not just a one-off event, as there's still a substantial uncertainty about the timing and the pace of rate increases in the US, and also about the unwinding of UMPs in Europe and in Japan. So, what are the policy tools that we could use to tackle this unwinding? Again, I think it would be important to have better communication from the advanced countries regarding the timing of their unwinding in order to prepare countries better for the consequences. Good fundamentals have already been mentioned by the chair of the AU, and evidence, of course, does exist that emerging markets and in African countries with strong economic fundamentals are much in a position to address economic vulnerabilities. And then the interventions by central banks, of course, subject to strong fundamentals, will be possible, but exchange rate movement should be allowed where the current account deficits are quite huge or where terms of trade shocks have been quite significant. Prudential policies at the time when we were having inflows were recommended. But the question is, when we are having outflows, what macro-prudential policies are we going to pursue? Probably not, as financial sector stability might be at risk with currency depreciation and balance sheet effects. What would be the role of the fund in this? I think, in principle, the fund can facilitate international policy coordination to improve the global outcomes through mitigating cross-border externalities of the UMP. It can also support UMP implementation and exit by providing global perspectives of these policies via its surveillance activities, advice on policy buffers to mitigate adverse potential effects, and objective analysis of potential gains from international monetary policy cooperation. Chair, before I conclude, I just want to mention one issue which I read in the concept note for this symposium and has been alluded to by a number of the previous speakers. And that is, should African countries consider UMPs? As we deliberate on this topic today, I would advise that maybe we have the following at the back of our minds, that to answer this question, it would be important to first understand why advanced economies pursued UMPs and determine whether the conditions in Africa warrant the use of similar policies. And we should also bear in mind the current risks that are faced in advanced economies as a result. Whatever the objectives are for African countries to pursue UMPs, we should be mindful of the limited arsenal of instruments at the disposal of the African central banks and whether these are sufficient to handle the widening objectives on a sustainable basis. Asking central banks to boost long-run growth by using UMPs for development finance could certainly pose risks and undermine the credibility of the central banks, and could result into unanchored inflation expectations, increased uncertainty, higher inflation, and output volatility. Possible conflicts in development objectives with monetary policy stance cannot be ruled out. So I would strongly urge that we consider policy coordination where fiscal and structural policies focus directly on promoting long-term growth, as monetary policy is best suited to provide a nominal anchor. Remember, monetary policy cannot effectively influence the real variables in the long run. And the recent examples in the case of Brazil during the global financial crisis illustrate some of the risks associated with emerging market central banks having multiple inconsistent objectives, especially development goals. On the other hand, the experience of India in the same period could possibly highlight why central banks in emerging markets should focus on their traditional roles. In conclusion, Chair, notwithstanding the risks I mentioned regarding the use of MPs, I think these have likely succeeded in achieving their domestic goals and were effective in giving financial turmoil that it needed, restored the market functioning. The rest of the world, of course, experienced mixed effects of large capital flows, and the spreads in emerging markets and African countries narrowed, but the management of inflows remained problematic. The taper tantrum is likely to live on, as the US may continue raising interest rates going forward, and the timing of the UMPs in Japan and in Europe could have significant implications for emerging markets and low-income countries. To this extent, therefore, the first line of defense of these countries is to ensure good fundamentals are in place to increase resilience and provide more policy room during unwinding. Chair, I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Great questions there by Dr. Atengi Ego.
Your Excellency,
Should up.
distinguished ladies and gentlemen, leaders serve. They serve their people. They serve their best interest. And in doing so, they are not always impressed, but because true leaders are motivated by loving concern than a desire for personal glory, they are willing to pay the price. And I think that carefully defines our president, who is on a journey of rediscovery. He is on a journey of reinvigorating the economy. He's on a journey of redefining our goals as a nation, on a journey of recrafting our narrative along change lines. It's therefore my honor and pleasure to welcome here the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Please welcome President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR.
The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, at this meeting signifies the import of the meeting and the desire of the present administration to effect the desired change in the nation's financial system.
Please sit down. Mr. Lucas Abaga Wama, Chairman, Association of African Central Banks and Governor, BEAC. Mr. Goodwin I. Emefiele, Vice Chairman, AACB and Governor, Central Bank of Nigeria. The Governor of Kebbi State, His Excellency Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, Senator Rafiu Adebayo Ibrahim, Chairman Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance, and other financial institutions. honorable ministers, members of the Bureau of AACB, and governors of African central banks present, African Union Chairman, represented by Dr. Anthony Maruping, Managing Director, IMF, represented by Dr. Adingi Ego, distinguished delegates and speakers, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to our capital city of Abuja on the occasion of the 216th Governors Symposium and the 39th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of Governors of the Association of African Central Banks. I advise our guests, especially those who are visiting Abuja, and variety of the city and the well-known hospitality of the Nigerian people. Your distinguished club, the Assembly of Governors of the Association of African Central Banks, meets annually to discuss and exchange views and experiences on topical issues affecting African economies and seek ways to improve macroeconomic governance in our countries. I sincerely hope that this year's event would generate discussions and provide viable policy options that would assist to resolve the numerous economic challenges facing the continent. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the theme of this year's symposium, I quote, "Unwinding Unconventional Monetary Policies, Implications for Monetary Policy and Financial Stability in Africa," closed, covers contemporary issues and is of special relevance to us in Africa. It corresponds with a period when African economies are confronted with a number of growing and sometimes extraneous challenges that constitute threats to growth and the stability of our financial systems. I am confident that you will come up with practical ways by which we can chart a way forward for the growth and development of Africa. The region is confronted with several global and domestic economic challenges. Most worrisome is the slowdown in growth, weakening global demand, rising inflation, restrictions in capital flows, rising debt levels, increased exchange rate volatility, and depleting external reserves. Those of us who rely on only natural resources, such as Nigeria, Angola, South Africa, and Mozambique, have been hit the hardest. We have also had to contend with the effect of the Ebola virus disease, which struck some countries in the West African sub-region. Furthermore, China, a major trade and business partner to a number of African countries, sparking fears of further weakening. Faced with these challenges, African central banks have been at their best in keeping African economies afloat through proactive and effective combination of conventional and innovative monetary policies. I urge you to continue to look for original, homegrown solutions, not rely on fit-for-all purposes. Prescriptions handed down from abroad. The world is a dynamic place, and with innovation, we can survive. In Nigeria, the Central Bank of Nigeria has for many years spearheaded economic stimulus measures through specific intervention programs. I think these measures should be sustained through good times and through difficult times. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we fully understand that monetary policy alone is not sufficient to bring about desired economic growth. We must carefully balance monetary and fiscal policy measures. For us in Nigeria, while recognizing the challenges we are confronted with and the need to surmount them, we are determined to diversify the economy away from excessive reliance on oil and other primary products. Consequently, we are taking measures and implementing policies that would ensure we are self-sufficient, generate massive employment, and explore our untapped human and natural resources. We shall also embark on export production diversification steps, including investment in infrastructure, promotion of manufacturing through agro-based industries, and expansion of regional trade. All this would involve integrating the informal economy into the mainstream and providing funds to small and medium enterprises. We shall also continue with greater determination and focus to pursue our goal of ensuring improved security for our country and its citizens, and without letting up on our fight against corruption and terrorism. Side by side with economic stimulus measures, we must intensify our surveillance and give guidance to the operations of our financial institutions to reverse the trend of illicit flows of funds out of Africa. We should all be serious in putting place measures aimed at ensuring that the proceeds of these illicit flows are repatriated to their countries of origin with minimal bureaucratic issues. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I now have the pleasure and honor of declaring this symposium officially open. I wish you all very fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.
President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, still at the Association of African Central Banks 39th Ordinary Meeting of the Assembly of Governors, with the theme Unwinding Unconventional Monetary Policies, Implication for Monetary Policy and Financial Stability in Africa.
Mother Teresa captured this woman when she said that at the end of life, we will not be judged by how many diplomas we have, how much money we have made, how many great things we've done, but we'll be judged by I was hungry, you fed me. I was naked, you clothed me. I was homeless, you took me in. And as the Deputy Governor in charge of economic policy, she understands this, not just on a personal level, but even the economic policies that come from her are ones that are lifting our people out of poverty and growing our economy. Please join me as I welcome Dr. and Mrs. Sarah Lade to do the vote of thanks.
Your Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, Chairman of the AACB, and Governor of the Central Bank of West African States, BIAC, Mr. Lucas Abaga Nchama, Host Governor and Governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, the Vice Chairman of the AACB, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, Honorable Ministers, the Executive Governor of Kebbi State, the representative of the African Union Commission, Commissioner for Economic Affairs, Mr. Anthony Mothi Marumpi, the representative of the IMF, our chairman of the Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance, and Other Financial Institutions, Senator Rafiu Ibrahim, the governors of AACB member countries, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me to stand here this morning to express the sincere gratitude of the management of the Central Bank of Nigeria and the entire membership of the AACB to the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, for making time to grace this occasion of the 39th Ordinary Meeting of the Assembly of Governors and the 2016 Symposium on the theme Unwinding Unconventional Monetary Policies, Implication for Monetary Policy and Financial Stability in Africa. Excellency, for honoring us with your esteemed presence to attend this conference personally. The presence of Mr. President at this gathering is a testimony of his total commitment and support for African regional integration and the achievement of sustainable growth and development on the continent. It is also an indication of Your Excellency's commitment to building an Africa that is economically diverse and more integrated. Let me, at this juncture, thank and commend the outgoing chairman of the association, Honorable Governor of the Central Bank of the West African States, for his leadership abilities in piloting the activities of the Assembly towards achieving monetary cooperation on the continent, despite visible daunting challenges. Your Excellency, Honorable Governor, the Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, the achievement of the African Monetary Cooperation Program will require all-round collaboration and political will. Our gathering here today is a testament to the seriousness accorded the program. Our gratitude also goes to the Honorable Governor of member countries and their representatives, Honorable Ministers here present, distinguished senators, and honorable members of the House of Representatives, managing directors of deposit money banks, as well as members of the diplomatic corps, our development partners, top government functionaries, the organized private sector, and bankers who have honored our invitation to grace this occasion and to contribute to the success of this ceremony. Your presence today underscores the importance you attach to seeking avenues to foster the African integration agenda. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the hard work of the staff of the AACB Secretariat, the staff of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Committee of Experts for their commitment and dedication, and all those who have contributed directly or indirectly towards the success of the opening ceremony of this event. I would also like to thank our resource persons, presenters and discussants who will be leading discussions on the implication of unwinding unconventional monetary policy on monetary and financial stability in Africa. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all.
We thank you too. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, before we take the national anthem, let me quickly announce that immediately after the national anthem, the rest of us will be seated, and then we'll allow His Excellency the President to step out and have a group photograph outside with the following people.
The Assembly of Governors is the highest ranking organ of the Association of African Central Bank. The meeting continues its plenary sessions focusing on three key areas: implications of unwinding unconventional monetary policy for monetary policy in Africa, impact of unwinding unconventional monetary policy on exchange rates and capital flows in Africa.
Please, let's take our seats as His Excellency the President will be rising with all the members of the top table. And then we have all the African Central Bank governors.
All right, it's been the 39th ordinary meeting of the Assembly of Governors of the Association of African Central Bank. The 2016 symposium holding at the main auditorium of the Central Bank of Nigeria. It's been a very fruitful deliberation as the meeting dovetailed into plenary session, as I earlier mentioned. And at the plenary session, we will have issues such as implication of unwinding the unconventional monetary policy for financial stability in Africa, and also impact of unwinding unconventional monetary policy on exchange rates and capital flows in Africa, as well as implication of unwinding unconventional monetary policy for monetary policy in Africa. It's been a wonderful time on behalf of the Outside Broadcast crew. I say a very big thank you for being a part of the broadcast today. My name is Sheil Ogunluyi. Thanks for joining us.